the symptom of narcissistic abuse or neglect or some kind of something happening in the home, the family home, and how this can manifest into adolescent promiscuity, and what we can do if we see a girl, you know, what that symptom means and what to do about it.
Let me ask a little true. I'd like to know your point of view.
You know, this really pretty innocent, sweet girl, all the way through my freshman year of high school. Then the summer after freshman year of high school, this trauma happened, and it just triggered something in me, and that's when it happened, and everything changed for me then. I changed the way that I dressed, I changed my hairstyle, I started wearing more makeup. And then also there was a piece of it too, is I think that I was sexualized in my home. My father kind of objectified me, and there was a competitiveness between my mother and me for his attention, kind of thing, and that he created. So I knew I needed to grow up fast. I needed to get my love and attention needs met somewhere else other than my family. I didn't get messages that I was highly valuable from my family at all. Learned all this stuff about narcissistic abuse and CPTSD and all that, and I started looking back on this adolescent promiscuity to see if there was a link, because like so many things, I think that a lot of times we pull things out and think of them as the problem, when really what they are is a symptom of trauma. And this is the same thing I talk about again and again with addiction, you know, that where I really feel like addiction treatment programs are failing is that they are focused on addiction with 12-step program, and no one knows how to fix that. No one knows how to fix that, but that's also just a symptom of the problem. And if they would focus on healing trauma, they would, I think, have a much better success rate. First treatment center that my son went to, there was actually a girl there, a teenage girl. The program was for teenagers. A girl there who was there for promiscuity. So it was, and all the kids that were in this program with him were not there for drug addiction. They were there for different kinds of addiction. But again, none of them, they did not do trauma, which I didn't know enough about it yet then. Back then I assumed, we found this really exclusive place, and it was, you know, highly recommended and all this kind of stuff. And I just assumed they're professionals, they know what they're doing. And in fact, that place ended up being really, really bad. It ended up being, you know, very traumatizing to my son, and I could just go on and tell you about a nightmare about what that place was like. But what I found is that the more I looked into it, the more I found other things coming up where no one was specifically talking about this trauma behavior, this showing up in adolescent promiscuity. I've really kind of avoided BPD on my channel because I just didn't know enough about it, and I didn't have any experience that I knew of in my own life with anyone who had BPD. And especially the more I read about it, actually it did sound familiar to me, but it sounded just like CPTSD to me. It sounded like so much like CPTSD. But what really kind of made it collapse for me was when I started looking into sexuality, because BPD is one thing that they really say, you know, they equate this sexuality to. And of course they're also talking about adult behavior, and this was not a behavior for me as an adult. This was behavior for me as a child. And you know, fighting an uphill battle if we can't sort of boil it down to what we can. We name all these different symptoms, a different disorder or a different thing that we're trying to address one by one, when instead it seems like we could just be focusing in on trauma. I'm wondering if, you know, I haven't heard anybody else really talk about if they had an experience with adolescent promiscuity. But I'm sure that some of you have, because I tell you what, I see it so much I've seen it so much with my son's friends, their, you know, girlfriends and stuff like that. My way of keeping them, or my way of, you know, if I do this or I'm good at this, they'll like me, you know. It was also sort of boundaryless. It was sort of like, I'm not sure who I would have said no to, you know. So, you know, it was almost like if you had the guts to talk to me, or the guts to do it, then I would do it. And it was really just really bad. And then once I got a boyfriend, once I got a serious boyfriend, then I just completely turned it off. I was never pursuing it. Like I was never like targeting or looking for it, but I just didn't see it coming, and I didn't deflect it. There were a couple of things going on. One was I was looking for love. I was hungry for love. I didn't know that though. I was hungry for love. I was hungry to be chosen, to have someone claim me, and also I couldn't say no. So I had come from this small country school where all the kids from kindergarten through 8th grade knew each other, and there were like 30 kids in my class. We went up to a big city high school, and so all of a sudden all this attention that I wasn't used to. And in my previous school up to the 8th grade, we were all just kind of friends. But now all of a sudden I'm there with older kids and getting all this attention for the first time, and I just didn't know how to handle it. And for a couple of years I was just very, very promiscuous. It got a really bad reputation, and and then what ended up happening is my first love, and that was my first long-term relationship. That happened my senior year. It was a cry for help. That my family clearly didn't resented my doing it. They totally ignored it, and that's when the scapegoating of me began. It really took off. So ever since that time of my life, I was always the black sheep kind of a thing. And because it threatened to expose something, and I didn't know what I was threatening to expose. I had no idea. I had no idea what was driving me, why I was doing it, what was going on. I really had no idea. It wasn't like my parents or anybody ever came to me and said, what's going on with you? No, there was nothing of that. There was judgmental things being, name calling and things like that, and meanness and that kind of stuff, but no compassion really shown me. And that's a repeating pattern in my life, and I believe that that's a repeating pattern in a lot of our lives. The symptom of a narcissistic abuse or neglect, or some kind of something happening in the home, the family home, and how this can manifest into adolescent promiscuity, and what that symptom means and what to do about it. And one of the things that I really want to work on is a program for middle school students. So before they're old enough to be dating on their own, like before they're 16 and driving and out on independent dates, catch them in that age group before they're they're starting to get interested in boys, but they're not yet old enough to date, like on their own. Catch them at that age group and do a series of courses on relationships and love, and coming up with a definition of what love is, how to identify it, how to identify abuse. Because this is the thing, is that if you were abused in your home, imagine the difference that it would have made if before you started dating, someone asked you about that. You were made to think about it. Like, if I thought about what is love, what is abuse, identify them, and how would I know when I'm loved? How would I know when I'm being abused? I think it would have helped me a lot to identify what was going on. And the other thing that it really would be helpful to do for people that end up being this sort of codependent, people-pleasing type of behavior that is so common in children of narcissistic parents, is to tune into, what do I want? What serves me? What are my tastes? What's my favorite thing? What are my values? What do I care about? Where am I going? What are my goals? And because you lose track of that so easily if you are outside focused. And if you are a child that was brought up in a narcissistic home, you are not properly mirrored back. You rely on your parents to mirror back to you who you are, to reflect back to you that you are valuable, that you are precious, that you are beloved, that you are, smart, and you are all these things that you count on being mirrored back to you. That when you're happy, they're smiling back to you. When you're sad, they go, I'm so sorry, you're sad. That kind of thing. If you have parents that are either ignoring you or telling you, I'll give you something to cry about, or, you're not sad, you're fine, or whatever, that's invalidating and makes you very prone to this. So back on it, I can diagnose what was going on. And I'm just wondering, because no one's ever really, I've never not heard anybody else talk about this symptom, if any of you experienced this same symptom of, you know, and I'm guessing it would be far more in girls, because with boys there's a whole different thing going on with sexuality. Numbers of people doing it are extreme, and it's gotten to be much more of a norm than it was, you know, it was very not normal back in when I was in high school. But I'm wondering if that is because narcissism is on the rise so much. Are just more and more kids in homes that are in homes that are similar to mine? You know, are more kids being raised by narcissistic parents? If you listen to a group of different psychologists, they're going to contradict each other on almost every single point regarding this stuff. And so pretty soon you just have to kind of come up with, you know, what really makes sense to you in your experience, what you've witnessed, what you've actually seen happening and witnessed. My opinion is that I would not really give too much emphasis on any of these diagnoses. And I would definitely pay attention to that these are symptoms of trauma and just treat them that way. I notice is if you treat things like an addiction, like a problem all in and of itself, you go about it the completely wrong way. Because what you do is totally different than what you would do if you're trying to deal with trauma. Because modus operandi for dealing with addictions is all this shaming 12-step stuff. You know, you claim you're powerless, you take the blame for everything that's wrong, you know. Well, if you've been the person that's been scapegoated and blamed for everything that's been wrong all along anyways, that's completely the wrong thing to do, you know. So that both borderline people with CPTSD have earlier sexual experiences, twice as many sexual experiences, sexual partners, and also increased depression, lower self-esteem, you know, all these things. They go hand in hand. More sex, lower self-esteem. I mean, it really does. And, you know, and I'm listening to, I was listening to somebody's channel. He was saying that promiscuity is leading, you know, makes girls crazy. You know, that easy girls go crazy. Well, I say they were crazy first. It's only people that have something wrong, that are traumatized, that will start to be promiscuous, and then it does compound it. I think it's a cycle. It's a bad cycle that happens, and you need to be sort of pulled out of it. And what pulled me out of it was love. Somebody just needed to love me and claim me and say, you're my girl. And that was really all I was really after. I needed a family, and he became my family. If you can look back on your life and see things that were early signs before you were identifying what had happened, did you have any signs like this? And then in an upcoming episode, we'll talk about borderline and the sexuality that starts happening, or sexual behavior that happens in adulthood. So stay tuned for that. Okay, you guys, thank you so much. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and like this video, and I will talk with you very soon. Bye-bye. The word slut in Iceland is not a put down. The word slut in Iceland is sort of a compliment. It literally means I own myself.